Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Welcome to The People's View. I'm your host, Carl Seidel. The People's View is sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee, and you can find out more about the activities of the committee by going to its website, nashuagop.org. We meet on the second Thursday of the month at the Crown Plaza Hotel Auditorium, and we'd like to see you there. My guest today is Karen Testerman. Karen, you're running for Senate, and the last time you were here, you were just thinking about it. Tell us why you decided to go all the way.
Well, Carl, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's an opportunity to be on People's View. I'm running because my country's in trouble, and we've got children and grandchildren, and I don't want to be, as Ronald Reagan said, sitting in my sunset years explaining to my children what it was like to be free in America. So I want to make sure that we still are free in America, and that the America that we leave, the United States of America, that we leave to our children is better than what we had when we were there.
Well, that's a nice statement, but how are you going to do it? That's a big job to do the whole state here and get everybody to know who Karen Testerman is and why she's the person they should vote for.
Well, I've been going out and talking to people about my message, and my message basically is that we've got a fantastic country. We are exceptional in so many ways, and primarily the reason we're exceptional is stated in our Declaration of Independence, in which we say that we hold all these truths to be self-evident, and we talk about the fact that we were all created equal. In God's view, we were all equal, and that freedom then allows us to dream and to make mistakes sometimes, and we've got the choice of how we're going to live our life. And so when we do that, we ensure that we have the best amount of choices that there are. And right now, part of our problem is that we've got a government that is regulating us and controlling us rather than empowering us.
And protecting us.
And protecting us, exactly. So that's one of the reasons that my platform is that we have to be constitutional. The second thing is that we have to secure our borders and have our national security. That includes immigration. That includes making sure that we provide the kind of protection, and that we also are ready to defend ourselves on another shore, rather than here, if possible. And also that when our allies call upon us because they need help, that we are prepared to be able to go out and help them as well. Now, we don't want to be a policeman across the country, across the world, but we do want to be prepared if our allies are calling upon us. And the third thing is that we've got people who are trying to put food on their tables and trying to put a roof over their head, and they need their jobs and their economy. And the best answer for their jobs is to make sure that the economy is robust and full. And one of the best ways that we can do that is to become independent, energy independent in the United States. It's fully within our capability of doing that. So I'm running, and when I go out and talk in the public, I try to go to as many places as possible. If people want to have me into their kitchens to sit down with their friends and have a conversation about what it is that concerns them, I'm more than happy to do that. If they have an event that they'd like me to attend, if they want to walk me around the fairs, we did that last
really?
summer. Yes, I was up in Lancaster and had a good friend up there who would take me down the midway, and we shook hands, and she would tell him, you know, if you're from New Hampshire, you need to talk to this lady. So we have friends that help us out that way. And then I'm going around. I'd like to visit as many businesses and activities that are going on in the state. So, because then this is a vast state, and it's, even though it's one of the smaller ones in the United States, there's so much that goes on here. And of course, as a candidate, I'd like to go out and find out what that is, because I will be representing the whole state of New Hampshire, not just a few.
That's an ambitious statement. How do people get in touch with you or your organization?
Well, they can go to the website, which is testermanforsenate.com, or they can call us at it's 603-731-9733, and that's our campaign office. Or they can even email us at press for Senate, or I'm sorry, it's press@testermanforsenate.com.
Press@testermanforsenate.com. Good.
Yeah.
We'll put that at the end of the tape here so that we'll put the audience, if they haven't the pencil ready, they can wait till the end of the show and copy that down. So
Terrific.
they can contact you. And that would go if they wanted to make contributions or anything like that. To
Absolutely. There's a donation page there. And, you know, we also have a Facebook page.
Oh,
it's
good.
a Karen Testerman for Senate. Actually, I think it's just Karen Testerman, but they can find it. And I do have a Facebook page, and you can actually donate on the Facebook page, too.
Oh, good, good. Well, you have to put together an organization for something like this. I mean, it's very costly and it's time consuming. I don't know how you get your time isn't your own anymore.
Correct.
You have to go around and see everything. How do you have staff to help you get organized?
I do
and
have
schedule?
a staff, and we have a campaign manager and a communications person right now. Eventually, we'll add field people and so forth as we get into the next year and get closer to the actual primary and so forth. But yes, you touched on something very important, which is that there's no campaign that runs without finances, and it is, unfortunately, it is very important if you want to get your message out, because you have to be able to hire a staff. And you eventually, we do have access to an office now, but we have to have furniture to put in that office, you know, and computers and so forth like that.
Yeah.
And so those sorts of things will come, either somebody will lend them to us and let us use it for a little while during the campaign and then take them back, which would be ideal. But it's almost like starting a small business, but you're doing it in a short period of time. So if you figured out in your business plan that you were going to need to raise $3 million, in what time we've had here, I announced last month, so that's November through September of next year is the primary, and then November to the next year. So in a year, you're trying to start a $3 million business, and that's quite a challenge.
It is. It is. Well, good luck on that.
Well, thanks.
What do you think is going to help you get the name recognition that over the number of people that are running against you in the primary, as well as an incumbent who you're looking to replace?
Well, the best thing was I started out 2 years, actually it's been 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, when I ran for governor in the state of New Hampshire and visited many of the communities and businesses, like I said. And then I have a radio program on WSMN in Nashua. I do that on Mondays and Thursdays. I actually pay for that, so it's not one where they're giving me any special freebies. But I do that, and then I've been on different radio talk shows all over the state. There's a number of them, and there are many of the cable access.
The public access.
Right. The public access has been a real pleasure. I've been on WMUR, and I've been, last night it was even on a blog talk radio out of Washington, D.C.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it's a matter of getting name recognition all over. And, you know, and I've gone to various conventions so that because it's a federal office, people can contribute to more than one candidate. There's a limit at what you can contribute, both individually and conglomerately. So someone could contribute to me here and then feel like, well, I still want to influence what's going on down in Washington, D.C., so I may see that there's a candidate down in Georgia or a candidate in Louisiana or one out in, say, Nevada or someplace like that that I want to contribute to. And then there's a limit to how much you can contribute to those campaigns as well.
Didn't know that. I thought
Yeah,
it was each
it's
individual.
quite interesting when
Oh,
you get into this, yeah.
Yeah, because I've been getting some of that mail.
Yes, and you wonder why you're getting this out-of-state mail, but that's the reason.
Well, I know why they all need it. Campaigning is a hard job.
Right, it is a hard job.
Well, let's assume then that you're going to get the office. So what are you going to do once you get to Washington?
Well, one of the things that I intend to do for sure is to not disappoint the people in New Hampshire, because I said that I would do something, and then when I get down there, I get starry-eyed. I'm not going to get starry-eyed. I intend to keep my word to the people. Integrity is very, very important, and that's one of the reasons that the ratings of our Congress and our president are so low, is because people are tired of hearing placations and falsehoods and promises being broken. You know, I keep thinking back to read my lips. I intend to stand by my word. The next thing I intend to do is make sure that when I'm in office and there's a bill in front of us, that we do everything we can, and because of technology and what's afforded to the people who are sitting in office, they have their own website, they have their own staff. I intend to make sure that when there's bills up in front, that during the week, we cover so many bills, or I don't know
So
how
you
many
have time to
votes, you
study.
actually get to. But people should know what it is that we're voting on, why you voted the way you voted. And if there's something that needs to be addressed, then certainly you can. They even put little YouTubes on the front of them now, and address their constituents and say, this is what I need from you at this point. And people, I expect the people also to do something for me, and that is, they need to hold me accountable to them. So if something's going wrong, I want to hear from them. And when I come back into the state, and I don't intend to stay down in Washington the whole time, I do intend to come back. I love my house up in Franklin, and I don't want to become so accustomed that I never come home. But when I do come home, I want to have town halls. I want people to come and talk to me about what it is that concerns them.
Okay, and then communicate with the emails and everything
Exactly,
like that.
exactly. And then the thing that I intend to do is to work as best I can to achieve the final goal, which is, to me, it's getting the government away from regulating and telling us what to do, back to the people telling and serving the people and letting the people tell us what we need to do.
That's good.
Yeah, which is, that's what the Constitution says we're supposed to do. And there's only 3 things that we're really supposed to be doing, and there's a whole lot of departments down there that probably need to be regulated and brought back into the ultimate view.
Well, I see that in your flyer that you hand out, as I call it, your testament. They have a number of agencies that are trying to get after us. You're interested in making sure they don't have that liberty of doing.
Right, exactly. Well, probably one of the most egregious departments down there that's used to regulate the public is the Internal Revenue Service. Then there's also the Environmental
EPA,
Protection Agency that really comes in and says, you can't do this or you can't do that. And the IRS has certainly been intimidating a whole lot of people.
They can be.
They can be. And, you get that letter from the IRS, whether it's just we've discovered a mistake and here's some money back, or it's you need to be audited. It doesn't matter. When you get that letter, you see IRS up in the corner and you start shaking in your boots, and that should not be.
No,
There
no, they
never
should be a much more friendly type of interaction.
Absolutely.
You know, they don't realize it's almost like you're the enemy, you know, and they treat you like you're being interrogated.
Oh, and they do interrogate.
yeah.
I mean, I've interviewed some of the people who were actually trying to get their 501c3 approved.
Oh, yeah.
And had just pages of
And
questions.
they're still doing that, I understand.
And they are still doing that, and that's wrong. They
Yeah.
should not be doing that. And you know, so the tax structure in this country should be much, much simpler than it is. And everybody should have some skin in the game. It's
Definitely.
like when we're raising our children at home and we find out that Johnny would like to have this Lego set. If we just go out and buy that Lego set for him and just give it to him, it may, and you know, the pieces will end up here or on the floor, and you step on them in the middle of the night, and it's nothing more painful than a Lego. But if Johnny had to wash the dishes once a week for his quarter that he was going to save, or he had to take the trash out, or he had to take care of the dog, whatever it is, to earn a little bit of extra cash. And he actually puts some time and effort into it and saves his money and then buys that Lego set, no matter how big or small. Those pieces are going to be in a container and they're going to be taken care of, because you know, I put my time and my effort and my energy into getting that done. So the same thing applies to our country.
Oh, yeah.
If everybody has to put in something, even if it's $1, then we would tend to be more involved and we tend to take care of our country much better. So I think we could restructure the whole tax system, not that we don't need the taxes.
Boy, it
but
sounds very good.
We could restructure it and go to a flat
should.
tax or a fair tax,
Yeah.
as long as everybody paid something.
I agree. You have to have skin in the game.
Yeah.
And there's too many freebies that they're expecting it. And they'll sit back and, well, let me just take this unemployment tax that didn't get continued after this year. What do you think about extending it for 99 days, 99 weeks or whatever it was?
Oh, this budget is really a disaster in
Isn't
so
it?
many ways because, first of all, we didn't cut any spending. We started to spend a little bit more. And then eventually they said, the third step is, we will cut spending. Well, trust us.
Yeah.
And how's that been working for us?
Not very well.
It hasn't worked at all. So, I mean, we're now, what, 5 years without a budget that is legally required? But to answer your question about the, and I forgot what it was exactly, but, you know, we do need to make sure that those agencies that are down in Washington, D.C., are accountable to the people. And if they're not doing the job that they were supposed to be doing, then we need to send them home.
Well, it was extending the unemployment to 99
that's right.
weeks, but I've heard a number of stories where people who are small businessmen were offering positions to people, and you know, they were turned down because they was happier to stay home and get unemployment.
That's been going on for years, by
Yeah.
the way. I can remember when we lived back in San Antonio many, many years ago, and that was one of the discussions on the radio, is it costs me less to stay home and collect unemployment than it does to go to work. Because if I go to work, I have to pay for my car, I have to pay for the gas, I have to pay for clothes and cleaning of them, and we tend to eat out more often as a result. So it's cheaper for me to stay home and collect unemployment. But under Bill Clinton, we did this welfare reform. Do you remember that? And in that welfare reform, we made it limited how long you could stay on, and you also had to be actively looking for employment. You couldn't turn down a job. And at the same time, if you couldn't find a job in your particular area, then they were helping you go back to school so you could get retooled in that area. And it worked extremely well. We were able to fund some education programs with the excess that was coming back because it did work very, very well. We need to reinstitute that. This president completely nullified that when he came into office. And so I think we need to put those requirements back on people.
Definitely.
And the other thing that's interesting is that through some studies that have been done in other countries, when the unemployment time came close to being expired, all of a sudden people get jobs. You know, and so if you had unemployment that went for 2 years, and it was starting to get close to you're running out of your 2 years, you would get a job. Or if they reduced it down to even 6 months, when that 6 months is starting to get go away, then people got jobs. So I'm not real excited about extending.
Yeah, it's supposed to be there to help people over the hump.
Right.
Not to give them, you know, the leisure to wait around and pick out something that might be a lot more than they were making before. I agree with you. And the other thing that I think we have to look at, and it's not that we don't care about people who are in a bad situation, but they got to be able to work at getting out themselves. They get a lot of help, but they can't, you know, just be given something. I think
Exactly.
it gets back to what you said.
Right. And people need to be employed. And I mean, it goes back to their own self-worth.
That's right.
They respect themselves. They feel better about themselves in the long run. And, you know, all throughout our history in this country, people have been taken pride in taking care of themselves. That's what you know, we tried that socialist model, so to speak, back at the very, very, very beginning in Jamestown and in Plymouth. And they tried to, everybody takes care of everything, everybody pays into the center, and if you didn't work, that was okay. And they almost lost half of their community.
Sure.
So then they decided, you know what, we need to make sure that we take, each family is personally responsible for taking care of themselves. And then if there's something left over, they can make the decision to help their neighbor. And that's the capitalist theory, and we've been using it in this country for almost 238 years, I think it is this year. And we've been very, very successful. And now all of a sudden we've gone into, since the 1940s, we've decided that we're starting to hand out checks to people without having any responsibility for it. And it just doesn't work.
Well, now you talk about socialism. What about Obamacare?
Oh, Obamacare. You know, Obamacare is about power. That's all it's about. It's about making someone else in charge of you, because if you really look at it, now what was the latest one was, well, the insurance companies can go ahead and pay for things, and then we'll work it out in the end.
How about that?
Well, who's going to be paying in the end? It's going to be the government. And where do those dollars come from? They come from your back pocket. It's just that we are going to redistribute this without your saying. And, you know, that's totally in opposition to what we were talking about earlier in the founding of our country, where everybody takes care of their own family, and they make the decision about where that money's going to go.
No, I mean, I think went at the whole thing backwards, as far as I can tell. They wanted to solve a problem that affected maybe 15% of the population, but then they involved the other 85% who were happy, for the most part, with their situation. And then they had one size fits all.
Right.
And then they threw it into a 2,000-page bill that nobody understands, and they're still figuring out what the consequences are of all the things that are in there.
Well, this has been Jean Shaheen's philosophy all along, because if you, just in health care, if you go back to when she was a state senator, she introduced a bill that fostered one insurance company in the state and gave them, well, made it uncomfortable for the other insurance companies, who then left the state. And now, and we went from anywhere from 12 to 26, it depends upon what literature you read. But obviously went down from a very competitive situation down to 3, and now we're at 1 on the exchange. And the other thing she's done that is in the same realm is that when we had kindergarten, she was a governor of the state, I think, when we went to all-day kindergarten. That was state mandated. At that time, we had 80% of the people, or the children who were kindergarten eligible went to private kindergartens. And so we instituted an all-day mandatory kindergarten for the other 20%. Well, we also had at that time readiness. And it was up to the parents to decide if Johnny or Susie were ready to go to kindergarten. And if they were, then the parents made that decision. And now they have no choice. They go to this mandatory kindergarten. Well, the same thing is true with our health care. We have totally disregarded those people who have made the decision that I want to either save my money and put it in a savings account and control my health care that way, or I don't care about having health care because I'm young and I don't ever expect to have to use it. We've totally taken that choice away from those people and said, you all have to have it now.
And you all have to have this kind.
Yes. And by the way,
Yeah.
we're all getting these notices in the mail that says, you know what, we were insuring you, but now we're not insuring you. Or we're insuring you, but now your premium is twice as much as it was.
Or your deductibles.
Or your deductibles. And by the way, I was talking to a gentleman today who said his Medicare bill went up because we think that Medicare is free, but it's not. You're supposed to make a contribution to it. He said he just got his bill. It's double what it was going to be.
I got to take it out of my Social Security.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And,
so we really need to rethink that completely. And one of the things would be, how would we solve it? You know, people always want to know, okay, you've got this, you don't like what's going on. What are you going to do to solve the problem? Well, there's a doctor, he's actually a congressman from Tennessee, who proposed that we have health savings accounts. And you can have multiple in a family, but you contribute to it. It goes with you whether you change jobs or whatever, but that's your health savings account. And then you have a catastrophic insurance plan to go with it. And if, say, you had your health savings account, your wife has one, and she had something and couldn't use all, and she's already depleted her health savings account, you could then contribute to her. And then when she builds it up again, she can contribute back or forth, but it's yours, you take it with you. The same thing we could be doing with Social Security.
Sure.
But they should have no restrictions on them. You know, at one time they were talking about instituting it for Social Security, that you could have your own little Social Security savings account that you could control. But if you were over a certain age, you can have that. Well, why not? If you want to start it at any age, why not? The idea is that you're saving, you're in control of it. And the same thing with your health savings account. There should be no restrictions because of your income or because of your age or anything else. It should just be there.
Sure, that sounds good. I know Forbes magazine a couple of weeks ago had a proposal that included all that, and you know, different ways that we could have done it would have been much easier for the people who already had insurance to just convert, you know, over to make sure that it covers all the bases that are supposed to be covered.
Well, and it's their choice.
Yeah.
And then if you're a white male like yourself, you don't have to now have, what is it, contraception?
Yeah, or maternity.
Or maternity coverage. I'm sorry, that's a little bit ridiculous.
Well, there's a lot of things there that are, you know, there are certain religions that want it to be exempted too on some parts of it. I mean,
religions and businesses.
That's right.
That are exercising our First Amendment right, which is the freedom from religion. And this is just saying our way is the only way, and you've got to do it, and that's wrong.
Well, do you think that you're going to be able to fix the ACA, or you're going to, or Obamacare, or you're going to have to just eliminate it and start over again in pieces?
It's, like I said, it's about power, and we need to probably eliminate it. And I mean, there are other alternative plans out there that would help us make some changes that need to be made. And, you know, eventually the goal would be to gradually put it back in the hands of the people and let them make their own choices, make them. There's a group in Oklahoma, a couple of anesthesiologists made an agreement with about 10 surgeons, and they decided they wouldn't accept insurance, they wouldn't accept any of the federal plans, but that they would deal directly with their patients on one-day surgeries, outpatient type surgeries. So they got themselves a website and decided what it would cost. And their costs were cash, and they were, a fraction of what it would cost if you were to go to a hospital. And I asked him, I said, so what happens if you have a Medicare type patient come in? And he said, then we treat them gratis. But the reason is that they don't want to deal with the insurance company. They're middlemen, and more money goes towards them. And so they've been very successful. They've opened up a second site, and I think that this particular doctor has been consulting with other doctors around the country to set up exactly that kind of situation. Obamacare, on the other hand, has completely eliminated a lot of our doctors. We've got a doctor up in Wolfboro that closed his practice. 5 people are without jobs now that were gainfully employed because of the mandates that Obamacare was going to make on him. Yeah.
Well, speaking of mandates, another department that's causing a lot of that is the Department of Education. Now, what do you think of this top-down part of it? There's another
Common
place
Core
where
is just, isn't this the latest of many attempts by the federal government to tell parents how they should educate their children, and they call it standards, but it's really not. It's really manipulating and trying to control the curriculum. And it's interesting because if you go back to 1979, I think it was, when Jimmy Carter first set up the Department of Education and made it a real department, the mandate for that department was to elevate our math and science scores internationally. And internationally, we have fallen. We've not gone up to the top. We're now down in the teens when you compare us to the other countries. So it would seem to me that they've failed. Now, if you're a company and you've got a branch or division that is losing money, are you not going to close that branch? And the same thing is true in the state of New Hampshire. In 1920 is when the Department of Education was started in this state. And if you go back and look at the literacy rate in our country at that time, it was in the high 90s. Today, our literacy rate, people who can read and write, Maggie Hassan, our governor, just had a business roundtable, and they discussed what was lacking, and the businesses are saying the kids can't read, write, and compute when they come to us for employment. So we're having to set up a special department in our businesses to teach them how to read, write, and compute. So I had an interview with Sam Blumenfeld the other day. Sam has been around for years and years and years, and he simply says, all you have to do, it only costs $25 to teach them how to read. And that's through phonics. And instead, we spend thousands and thousands of dollars on consumables, workbooks.
No, this Common Core is getting to be quite the discussion, and it looks like it's being controlled more by the people who sell the books to the
Yes, it
schools
is. That's right.
than it is by the locals. And we've always wanted choice with our own local school districts. That's why we've had it set up the way they were.
Yes, and John Heichel actually has a bill in that would restore that kind of control back to the parents, who really are the ones who should be saying what the standard should be. And at one time in this state, we had thousands of school districts, and they were controlled by the parents. The parents hired and fired the teachers, and the school district, and like I said, the literacy rate was way, way high, and the kids, you know, if you look at the 8th grade test from, what is it, 1850, and try to take it today, a lot of us adults can't even pass some of those questions.
You know, I might, as long as we're going into this nice conversation, I'll bring in the other part that I was going to say, with immigration and illegal immigration. Now, some of that is affecting our education, because we're getting people in who don't speak English and who have no idea of the history of our country and what most people are striving for.
Right.
And you know, they're not really prepared to take another job or to be a good citizen.
Well, we are a country of laws, and you said it very clearly. We're talking about illegal immigration, people who come across the borders illegally, and we need to enforce our laws. We've got good immigration laws if we would enforce them. But the other part of it is that we have businesses that are competing with each other, and one business will hire illegals, and another business will hire people who need jobs but who are here legally. And it's unfair to our businessmen when someone is breaking the law to hire these people and then try to compete for the same contract. You know, they can always underbid them. That's not right. And our obligation in America, in the United States of America, is to employ our people first, our U.S. citizens. And quite honestly, when we're looking at immigration, we are a nation of immigrants. I mean, how long has it been since you've heard that we were the melting pot?
Oh, yeah.
But we were the place where people came for opportunity.
And the people did take the opportunity, one, to learn English fairly quickly, and to integrate somehow into society. Maybe they were illegal, and maybe they didn't vote, but at least they took the initiative, keeping their own ethnic practices on the side,
all throughout history, we've done that.
That was enjoyed. I mean, people liked to go to some of these different celebrations that they had, and they were very worthwhile people. I mean,
absolutely. And you know, the other thing that's very interesting about that is that when we protect those people, and you were talking about education, when I was out in California, for example, we weren't allowed to ask if someone was illegal, and yet they benefited from paying in-state tuition and all of those sorts of things. That's wrong. That's not right for the people who are true citizens. And my children went to a camp up in Minnesota, and it was a language camp. And the whole philosophy behind this language camp was immersion. And the reason I bring this up is because these two GIs who started this camp did so because they observed while they were in Germany that the children on the playground absorbed the German language very, very quickly. And their parents, who were going to the base and so forth and interacting with the other Americans, had great difficulty absorbing the language. So they brought these children, or they started this camp, and you would go for a week. You had to, you took your money and you exchanged it for the country that you were going to. So my son was going to France. He walked through the door, and all contraband was taken from them. And the contraband was anything in English and any radios, tape players, anything like that. And then you accepted a name from France. You had this big book of French names, and so he would take a name from France, and he then would learn. They'd go live in a community in their camp, whatever it is, with their other 3 or 4 guys, and they'd talk in French. The whole time they were talking in French.
So right from scratch.
Right from scratch. They were not allowed to use English. And he learned French so well that when he went to the Naval Academy, he was able to clear a whole semester so that he could take advantage of another program because he tested out of the French classes. Immersion works.
Sure.
And so, and when you come to America, and that's what was true for many, many years, is that when you came to this country, you learned English. There was no English as a second language. You just were immersed in English and you learned it. And even Grandma, sometimes, though she fought it, unless someone was at home fostering that she could continue to speak in whatever her language was, she learned English too. So that's what should really be being done.
That is, and I don't know why the schools aren't doing that, because that's hurting them. They're getting the low scores because they have kids in there that don't understand it.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And if they all get, spend a semester doing English, doing, or summer school.
Right. And when you're on the playground and you're young, you do absorb the language fairly quick. And that should be done. I understand when you're getting older and so forth that it's more challenging. Yeah, everything's more challenging. Even the stuff that you learn and you know how to do that.
Well, you have a challenge going out for Senate, so that is something else. So why don't you just give me one final statement of what you want to do for the people, and so they understand why they should elect you.
Well, the number one thing that I want to do for the state of New Hampshire is to represent them, but in the process of representing them, to restore the constitutional intent of our country. We need to get back to the place where we are serving, the elected officials are serving the people of New Hampshire and letting them live their lives, not regulating their lives for them. So that's my ultimate goal, is to put the Constitution back in its proper status, and the government actually back in its status where it is limited to what the people have enumerated it to do. And people should vote for me because I am a person of integrity, and I've been working alongside of people in this state, trying to make sure that they're educated, encouraging people to take their place as informed voters, and to participate in the whole scheme of our society at the level at which they're able to, but at very, very minimum, be an educated voter and get to the polls and let your voices be heard, because when you stay home, things fall apart. And so you need to be involved. So if they want to go to my website, it's testermanforsenate.com. And if you want to make a contribution, you can make a contribution there. Also, we need people to volunteer to help. We're going to need to go out and wave signs and visit doors and, and talk to people. And that's, by the way, that's one of the most effective things that people have is their voice. So if you decide you want to support me, then go out and tell people why you want to support me. You can write a letter to the editor. You can send an email to your friends. And come to, there's one of the things on our website at testermansforsenate.com. You can go to the events page and you can see where I'm going to be. And come over, bring your friends with you, and come listen and see what it is. Ask the questions that you want to ask, and I'd be more than happy to work with you.
Good, and over the years that I've known you, I can attest to your integrity and your zeal, I guess I might say, for doing something better for this country.
Well, thank you very much, Carl. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for coming aboard People's View, and maybe we'll get you again once you get through the primary, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good enough.
All right.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
and thank you for listening in.